Well, just in case you thought there wasn't enough to talk about on Monday's show, we got a lot to get to today here on Locked On NHL. Evander Kane, yeah, he's still relevant. Zach Fucale, he is relevant again, and more here on today's Locked On NHL.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Locked On NHL, the Tuesday edition of Locked On NHL. I am one of the co-hosts of today's program, the Insider of the Insiders, Tyler Kuehl, and joined, as always, up in the six, Mike Distefano. Mike, how you doing today, sir?
That's a lie. I'm not in the six. I'm close, but I'm not technically in the
you're sorry. You're right. You're in Southern Ontario. You're close and you're right. You're not in the six.
The 905, my friend. The 905.
My apologies. I just offended every single person.
Oh yeah.
The six part deux? No, is that not what it is?
No.
Not a thing. Okay. I was trying to be funny, folks. That's the problem when I try to do that. First of all, Mike, how you doing? How was your weekend, friend?
It wasn't the best of weekends. I could tell you that. The Leafs suffered a pretty crappy collapse. They were up 4-1, and 4-1 is a very touchy subject when it comes to Toronto Maple Leafs. And then I'm a Colts fan, so watching the Colts just piss away their season like that yesterday, it was just really just icing on the cake to an already pretty crummy weekend. So sports-wise, not great. Personally, I've had some good family and friends.
Yeah, I saw that charcuterie board, eh? Like that was a heck of a spread you guys had going there. Is that a way to try to get over the fact that they didn't use Jonathan Taylor enough on Sunday? You had to have a bunch of good meats and cheeses.
Yeah, I had to essentially eat my feelings away after such a terrible loss. Yes, that's essentially what that was.
Yeah, man, I tell you, I did all my previews today for the upcoming weekend here. It's still going to be a great weekend of football. I know your team's not in it, but boy, there's some interesting matchups in Wild Card Weekend, let me tell you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, being in the 905, I can still pretend to be a 416 guy and kind of hop on Bill's Mafia bandwagon, jump through some tables. So I'll just go ahead and do that for the next month and a half.
You know what? What's more fun than jumping through a hard plastic with a metal frame table? Buffalo fans, you all get it.
Jumping through a wooden one.
Yes. A wooden one, like a New Japan wooden one, or a wooden one that's already been splintered like WWE, where you actually fall through it and not fall flat on your back.
Yeah, like Devon, Bubba Ray Dudley. Let's get the tables, get a nice jump off the top of some Winnebago van that's chilling in the parking lot. Yeah, that's the table jumping that I'm talking about.
Yeah, just in a perfectly placed, dumpster full of cotton and packing peanuts.
I mean, I don't know why the NHL like fans don't have massive tailgates like the NFL does. Why can't they do that? Why can't you sit there, drink beer in the parking lot, jump through some tables before you go to a Leaf game or a Detroit game or a Capitals game or whatever your game you're going to? I really wish that the pregame festivities were a little more lively for hockey like they are for football.
Well, you just mentioned all the teams that have zero parking outside of their arena. For one, I mean, unless you want, I mean, if you can do it in parking garages, sure, I guess you want to light that sucker on fire. I mean, of course, Scotiabank Arena is right on.
I've been to a lot of games in Buffalo, and there's nothing but parking in Buffalo by the arena. I think it's KeyBank Center now. I don't know.
On the south side. I know on the other side because. I think like the main entrance side there is KeyBank Rink, which is the practice rink. Canisius College plays there.
There's a floor pad there, and if you go all the way, that's legitimately. I'm pretty sure it's KeyBank Arena. There's a couple of restaurants and then parking, and there's the Ball Diamond as well. So there is no excuse for Buffalo Sabres fans to not also have massive gatherings and huge tailgates before Sabres games. And maybe that would bring some more fans out there. I mean, I don't know about you, but every time I watch a Sabres game, there might be 600-700 people in the stands. Like, let's make them more lively. Let's have some tailgates and get some of Bill's Mafia to kind of make their way into the hockey sphere and become Sabres fans.
I'll tell you, there's a good group of Sabres fans, but just no one wants to go downtown. And I'm pretty sure I saw Mike Stubbs from the London Knights was posting some video clips of himself calling their game, the Knights game yesterday against the Kitchener Rangers. And I think there were more fans in attendance at that game than the last Buffalo Sabres game. Which, if you're from Ontario, that means there was none, which is the joke. There was no fans in Kitchener for that game. So.
I'm from Ontario, and that joke went over my head, but that's a funny one.
It's okay. I trust me. I wish maybe some people snuck in like they did at the Bell Center for Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals there. By the way, I will admit, I do have in my office here, I got a game going on right now, Boston versus Washington. I wonder how much of our fan base would be happy to know the fact that Brad Marchand just got cut right on top of his nose.
Oh.
Yeah, well, him and he ran into, I think it was Nick Dowd. Yeah, Nick Dowd and him got into it, and he's got a little bit of a blood coming out of the nostrils there, and I'm pretty sure some people will make the nose jokes now accordingly.
Are you sure it's swollen?
It ain't swollen yet. It's still bleeding from the shot there from on NBC Sports Washington here. Before we go too far into the abyss of unknown, tangerine tangents that we're going to hit on today, Mike, let's get to some of the news that broke today. Now, for those that did listen and watch yesterday's episode of Locked On NHL, Gil Martin did talk about the story of the weekend of Evander Kane getting placed on unconditional waivers for the purpose of his termination of his contract, which did happen on Sunday. The National Players Association filing a grievance in doing so. But with his contract being terminated, he does become a free agent. As we have learned today, though, multiple teams have expressed interest in Evander Kane. The issues, we don't need to go into much of what exactly led to Evander Kane's termination. The details are pretty well written across the board. And obviously, if you listened to Gil yesterday, he went into deep details about that. But the fact of the matter is that we know one team for sure. We know one official team is going to communicate with Dan Milstein, his agent, Evander Kane's agent. And that is of the Edmonton Oilers, Ken Holland. And Mike, you mentioned that there is a video chat. You said tomorrow morning, I think, right?
I believe at 10 a.m. the Oilers, they tweeted this out earlier today. Jason Greger, who works at in TSN radio out in Edmonton, I think it's 1260. He tweeted out, Ken Holland will speak to me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Oilers announce. So I wonder if it's to announce this whole Evander Kane situation. And if they're chatting and they're trying to put pen to paper throughout the night, then tomorrow they unveil him and they allow him to speak to the media. Or else, what would this be about? What else could this possibly be about tomorrow? It's not, I don't think they're going to fire their coach. Like this might be it. Without like completely speculating, this sounds very much like the pieces of the puzzle kind of go together pretty well.
And that's the crazy part in this whole story was at first, the initial reaction was, oh, who's ever going to sign this guy? I mean, we all can admit Evander Kane is a really good hockky player.
I don't know if I ever. So did you think that he was done? I never thought he was done. I thought maybe, once he got his contract terminated, I think I was going to trade for him because of his contract. But once it got terminated, I think there's enough teams that will give him a league min $1 million deal, maybe incentive laden 1-year contract. And if it doesn't work out, oh well, chuck him off on waivers and you don't really have to worry about him. But I thought that once he got terminated, I was pretty sure that some team would roll the dice on Evander here this season.
Well, and that's the thing. That's why I wasn't naive to think that no one was going to want to sign him. But my buddy Pat Micheletti up in Minnesota, up in Hubbard, Minnesota, by the way, former Minnesota Golden Gopher, he made a good point because Gord Miller tweeted out just about 10 minutes ago when we were time of recording. They said, from what I hear, he'll have a contract with a new team by the end of the week. The he's talking about, of course, is Evander Kane. Pat Micheletti comments saying, of course he will. Why hold someone accountable? And that is where my concern is for Evander Kane, because he is a really talented player. He really, he got to play with Jack Eichel there in Buffalo and got his numbers up to the point where he was eligible enough and worth the risk for the San Jose Sharks to take him on initially and helped him out pretty much, for a couple of years there and helped get their offense going. But just it's the off the ice issues. Because remember, Mike, there was rumors that Tomas Hertl was not even going to want to come back to the Sharks if he was on the team. And that seemed like that discussion went away once Evander Kane was sent down to the minors.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues going on there, but I mean, we talk about accountability. What action are you trying to get the accountability for? Because he did serve a suspension, right? He did end up
Right.
serving the 21 game suspension. I would say that's whatever. That's the accountability that the league gave him. He didn't get paid for those games, and then he got sent down to the minors. So like I don't what else are you looking to get here? I know there's some other issues now. Apparently they're saying that he had another breach of COVID protocol and whatnot, which I guess that's what you're referring to. But contract termination is accountability, if you ask me. That's a lot of money he had left on the table. A lot of money. He still had what, like 4 years at like $6 or $7 million a season
Yeah.
left on his
It was a
contract.
high number. Yeah.
I
And
mean,
so,
that's
go
that's
ahead.
that's that's being held accountable. The fact that you're no longer going to get that. You want to make that type of money, you got to earn that type of money by shutting up, put up points, be productive, and be a good citizen. Because if you're not a good citizen, you don't get too many more chances, right? You don't get too many more chances, I think. So I think the accountability, in a way, is there for things that have been proven, we could say. There's a lot of other allegations out there. That's a whole nother story. But for
Yeah.
what we do know, the information that we do know, I would say that accountability has kind of been there for him. And now it's time for him to try and rehabilitate himself a little bit.
Do you think if he does, I mean, obviously, we, like you mentioned, Mike, we do not exactly know what the press conference in Edmonton is going to be tomorrow, even though there have been the ties. Darren Dreger confirmed on 1260 there in Edmonton, saying that there is a connection to Holland and Kane. Is this his last shot? Like, if he messes this up, he's got to be done, right?
I think so, yeah. Like, it's almost a 3 strikes you're out type of policy, I would think. I think he's got one more opportunity to clean up his life at the end of the day, not just not his game, but his life. Like what really like we is so strange is like, remember this summer he did a sit down with ESPN.
Yep. Emily,
You remember
not Kaplan. It was
about,
Linda Cohn. Yeah.
yeah, about how he came out and said I never gambled on my games. That was false, and like that never got proven. And he came out, and then all of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, he was caught doing the false vaccine passport situation,
Right.
and that's what he ultimately got popped and suspended for. So I think, yeah, I don't think he's got too many chances. Right, he's running out of them, but like, I don't know. I think it's the word I'm looking for here. Rehabilitation is good, but you only have X amount of lives. You know what I mean? And I
Right.
think he's already killed off a couple of them, so there's not many left for him.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see. And like I said, by the time some of you may tune into this, there could be the news. Now, granted that media availability for Ken Holland tomorrow may be something completely different. Maybe he's gonna tell people he had avocado toast for breakfast. I don't know. I mean, who knows how Ken Holland wants to talk about tomorrow. And they say, by the way, was that 10 a.m. Mountain Time or is that 10 a.m. Eastern?
Probably Mountain, because
So
Edmonton
noon
announced it,
Eastern
but
time. Okay.
yeah.
We got to make sure for our Eastern bias listeners and viewers that they know what time it's going to be at there,
Right.
because they're
So
probably just waking up
noon
and
for
at 10 a.m. They're like looking at their phones because they probably just woke up like I do. So
noon for all y'all East Coasters such as Tyler and myself.
for those 905ers and the 616ers there you go. I got your area code right there, Mike.
There you go.
We're going to touch on something a little more positive here, even though the game that a record was set in did not end well for this man. We will talk about it here in just a moment. Before, guys, I get to that, I have to ask you, do you got a beard like good boy Mike there? Well, you got to get Primal. That's right. Got beard, got beautiful, luscious beards. Get Primal. Because if you or someone you care about has a beard, it needs to get Primal Origin Oils. Because maybe you're that guy who has never considered the benefits of treating your beard with product. Well, Primal Origin Oils will stop the itch and make your beard look healthy and groomed. The products are free from harmful synthetic ingredients, and with low impact on our planet, Primal Origin Oils makes balms, oils, and whipped butter that are renowned as the best feel and beard products available. All products are fair trade certified and handcrafted in the United States as well. We know that every company claims to have the best, but Primal Origin Oils challenges you to compare their ingredients and the feel in beard to the other products you've used. We promise you'll see and feel the difference. Remember the code Locked On to get you 20% off at primaloriginoils.com. Once again, Locked On for 20% off at checkout at primaloriginoils.com. Now, Mike, for those that don't know, I am the host of the Locked On Capitals program. And this past weekend, we saw a record that not many people talk about because it's kind of an odd record to have. But the longest shutout streak by an NHL goaltender to start a career, that was broken this past weekend by the man who is in net right now between the Washington Capitals and the Boston Bruins, Zach Fucale. And for those that may not, some people that name kind of rings a bell. Well, Zach Fucale at one point, Mike, and you remember this as well as I do, was one of the most highly touted prospects, goaltending prospects, I believe, because his draft year was 2013, correct?
Yeah. Because it was him and Demko were like two of the best goalie prospects that year.
And he gets drafted. Yeah, because he got drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, and everyone and their mother did the exact same thing that would happen when Carey Price was drafted. Was why they have a starting goaltender at that time when Carey was drafted. They had Jose Theodore, and at that time, of course, here comes Zach Fucale. I'm like, hey, here is the eventual successor, believed to be to Carey Price. Unfortunately, Mike, that didn't happen. And he bounced around in the minors. He was, you said you saw him in Brampton. I saw him when I was covering the Kalamazoo Wings of the ECHL when he was playing for Fort Wayne. And all of a sudden he had this revitalization when he joined the Capitals system, had a good year last year with Hershey, and started off this year well enough to earn a start, got a shutout in his first NHL game back in November. And for a good chunk of time on Saturday against Minnesota, he was almost unbeatable. In fact, he was so unbeatable that his own team had to score on him.
Technically, like no one scored on him until the third period, right?
150. Well, I forgot how much time he played in because he came in on Friday after Ilya Samsonov was pulled against the St. Louis Blues. So he pretty much for almost 2 full games did not give up a goal, an actual goal, because Minnesota tied it in the final minute to send that game into overtime before the Caps ended up losing in a shootout. But Foucali set the official record at 138 minutes, 31 seconds. That's ridiculous. Like, even everyday NHL goaltenders don't even put that kind of a streak together pretty often. I mean, and just for me, the biggest part is for him, it's the story of how long it took him to get to the NHL. I know injuries and COVID had something to do with him playing this year, but the fact that he was able to perform after years and years, I mean, like I said, it's been over 8 years since he was drafted to finally get to the NHL. And goaltenders are slow burners, I know, when it comes to development, but this was a guy that was put on the back burner and put on low heat for a long time because it just never seemed like he was going to meet that potential. And, whether or not how he's played, I think he's looked really good in his 2 games. And I'm not saying full scale NHLer yet. That's a lot of hockey to be played before then, but he's just finding this way to just show that, hey, I can still be a good goaltender. And I'm just excited. I'm happy to see him finally get this opportunity.
Yeah, looks like he's given up 2 goals in the first period here in this game against the Bruins, though.
Both were power play goals, and the Capitals are synonymous with giving. And the Caps special teams are that's another show, Mike.
Another show, but it almost not. It doesn't ruin the story, but it would have been awesome if he comes out and rattles like 10 wins in a row to start his career. But
Patrick Aleem over there, yeah,
exactly. But look, man, like I love this story, and a lot of Canadians really love Foucali based on his success with the World Juniors and what he did for Team Canada, and then watching him in the Memorial Cup with the Halifax Mooseheads. Like, Zach Fucale was a household name at one point in Canada. When it came to like young up and coming Canadian goaltenders. And it just never happened. Like, drafted in the second round by Montreal, and then bummed it around in the minors, sent down to the coast, up in the AHL, back down to the coast, and just
Spengler Cup champion.
Won a Spengler Cup. Like, never really found his footing. And then all of a sudden, last year he pops up he was on the taxi squad for the Washington Capitals, was he not? And then
for this year, yep.
And then this year finally gets an opportunity to start a game, gets a shutout. And I remember watching that game. I remember it being a big deal up here, especially just based on his story. And everyone knows how long it took for him to get there. And then he, another great outing in relief. I just looked. He played about 20 minutes of relief and stopped everything in that outing. And then stopped almost all of his everything up until the third period against Minnesota. Like, it was just an unbelievable start to his career. And I'm not ready to obviously say this yet. So don't, people are gonna be like, oh, you're insane. But
So hit screen record, everybody. Anyone's watching on the Locked On NHL YouTube, hit screen record right now.
Yeah, hit record. But I mean, Jack Campbell had a very similar upbringing, right? Where like it was a guy, a highly touted top pick in the draft, but never really found his footing. Ended up in the AHL, then still couldn't find. Ended up in the coast, and then somewhere along the way found his game. Ended up back in the NHL with the Kings, then became a competent backup. And then a few years later, here he is, the number one goaltender, Vezina caliber goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, I'm not saying Zach Fucale is going to do that. I don't know if he can do that. Like you said, he's playing in his fourth game of his career. So there's a long way to go before we can even get that out there. But what I'm saying is it's happened before.
Yeah.
Right? Where goaltenders kind of in their mid to late 20s figure it out. They get that one opportunity and then they kind of run away with it. Like, that's just like Jacob Markstrom too. People forget that he wasn't, up until I would say his third year maybe in Vancouver isn't until he became the starting goaltender. Like, it took him a couple of years to do it. He was on waivers at one point when they had Ryan Miller and Eddie Lack. They passed up Jacob Markstrom for Eddie Lack in like 2015 or something like that. And then it wasn't until his late 30s where he really started to come on and become an elite goaltender. So we typically see goalies, not typically, but it happens often where goalies who are drafted high, there's so much praise, the potential is there. It just takes them nearly a decade to reach that potential. And I hope that this is the beginning of the story for Zach Fucale, where now he finally got to the show. He's got a couple of wins under his belt. He now has a little bit of momentum. He can, with all the going on in his life and his career right now, kind of ride that into a decent career for Foucali.
Yeah, because I mean, you have to be Mr. Positive. I mean, we know the stories of how Jack Campbell is super supportive of his teammates. Always, even if like his defense makes a horrible play, he'll make a save, covered up, tap him on the shins. Nice play, bud. Like, just Mr. Optimism there.
Did you see his save on Devon Tays over the weekend?
Oh, come on, dude. Everyone saw that save. Like, I remember watching that game. I had both that game on, and I think I was watching Michigan and UMass as well at the same time. And I remember just saying to myself, oh my gosh, that was the greatest save ever. And then, of course, the cap score right after that en route to that thing that we'll probably touch on a little bit later here. But, Campbell was – and then you mentioned Campbell. You talk about the similarities between these two guys.
The point I was making about that save is like about him being a nice guy is like he makes that save, unbelievable save, and then comes out and says, if I play up to my standards, we run away with the 2 points that night. It's like – what? You were under siege. You saw 49 shots in that game. You stopped 44 or 49 shots. It's not your fault they lost the game. Are you kidding me, buddy? Like, the guy's just way too nice sometimes. Way too nice.
Someone he could be at a table having a nice dinner with the family and friends or whatever. Someone could bring his soup cold and he'll tell the chef that he did a good job. Like,
chef's kiss. Oh, was this supposed to be borscht? No, cream of mushroom. Oh, delicious.
It's amazing still nonetheless.
Delicious.
You mentioned Campbell here, and the similarities between him and Foucale are kind of similar, at least at the point, because remember Campbell, and people remember that insane game in Saskatoon. Now making you feel old here, Mike. That was 12 years ago, by the way. But like that amazing game, Jack Campbell won the gold medal with Team USA in the World Juniors that year. So if there's any similarities, there you go. Maybe we can see history repeat itself here. And
I'm not saying. I'm just saying. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying
like if it doesn't happen, like obviously it was a long shot, but if it does happen, you heard it here first, and I want the credit.
And you mentioned Markstrom. I remember when he started off in Florida, I thought to myself, "Oh, this guy could be good if he was on a good team." I remember seeing him play the Griffins here in Grand Rapids, when he was with Utica, and just absolutely stonewalling Grand Rapids. And I remember, I think I tweeted out, this was like barely when I used Twitter. I said, "Man, this Markstrom guy's pretty good. Why isn't he in the NHL?" Well, 5 or 6 years later, here we are. Good story. I mean, if there's any way to tell a good story. But, man, I tell you, I really hope Foucale turns it around. By the way, the NHL posted the list of the longest shutout streaks to start a career. How many of these names can you recognize, Mr. Distefano? I'm gonna put this up to you. Well, everyone remembers Matt Hackett, even though that was 11 years ago that he set the record. He's the nephew of Jeff Hackett, right?
I think so.
It wasn't his son. I think it was his nephew. Dave Gatherum, famous goaltender for the Detroit Red Wings back in 1953. Apparently Terry Sawchuk was sick for a couple days. Marcel Paillet of the New York Rangers back in 1957 did it. He did it just under 100 minutes. Kenneth Appleby of the New Jersey Devils.
I do know that name, Ken Appleby. I do know that name.
That one was a little more recent. The next couple are kind of a little more notable. Darren Pupa, of course, right-handed catching goaltender for the Sabres. Michael Layton did it people remember him as the Philly Flyers. He did that with Chicago back in the Tebow years in 2003. That's how long ago that was.
Jocelyn Thibault.
Everyone, the best goaltender to ever play for the Montreal Canadiens. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Let's be honest, though. He was not going to win a cup with Colorado. Patrick Waugh was. Anyway, just for you old hockey historians out there, we'll get to more. We'll talk a little bit about here some coaching problems. Coaches having issues with officials. Who would have thought? That's a discussion we're going to have here in just a moment's time because there was some discipline handed out today. But before we get to that, guys, BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the sports wagering action for 2022. With the new year and a new updated desktop and mobile website, sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus to receive your first deposit by using the promo code LOCKEDON and get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Do not wait. Take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 21-22 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. BetOnline, that's where Mike is going to go put a bunch of money down on the Eagles to beat the Tampa Bay Bucks on next Sunday, right?
Probably not, because I don't want to lose all of my money.
See, I'm one of those guys, and I don't bet that often. I do occasionally there, but if I always tell my wife, because we're going to go to the Derby one day, the Kentucky Derby one day, because you know what? We got to get what?
That sounds fun. Like you got to absolutely show up with the flyest outfit, Tyler.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to pull something out of the Don Cherry wardrobe, like something super flamboyant and way out there, like where I stand out more than my wife, which will cause an argument, but I will win that argument because it's not often that I go up and go crazy with my suits and whatnot. But I say, I'm going to go there in probably the richest looking suit and bet on the horse with the worst odds. Because man, could you imagine if I put $20 down on the 500-1 horse? I'm going to walk out there in a flipping limousine.
Yeah. No, you'd be feeling pretty on top of the world. I think you would be. I made a bet tonight, which is funny because we're recording this Monday night, coming out Tuesday morning. So whoever's listening already knows what happened to my bet. But currently as it sits, I have two going. I got the Caps to win. So let's hope that
thanks. There you go. You jinxed it right now. That's why the Bruins are coming back. Jeez.
Probably. I got the Capitals money line. I also have the over in the Kraken and Avalanche. I think that one's I like that one a lot. It looks like Pavel Francouz is going to play, as is I think Grubauer is expected to play. Both those two I don't feel that confident about. And Colorado's averaging 5 goals themselves per game. So I think 6.5 is a decent little bet there.
6.5 is the over-under?
Yeah.
Holy cow, of course. Because first, like you said, the Avs are scoring like crazy. And I'll be honest, Francouz, I think, looked okay. If Darcy Kemper was in net for Colorado, oh, yeah, I would say 10-11 easily. Holy Kemper has been. That's a discussion for one of our other weekly shows here on Locked On NHL. All the podcasts, of course, you can follow us at Locked On NHL Pods and check out each of your favorite teams. Locked On Leafs there for Mike, Locked On Caps for me. And, if you're a Wings fan, Locked On Red Wings. If you're a Coyotes fan, God bless you, Locked On Coyotes. All the sorts of teams here. But we're going to mention the Stars here because today we found out that Rick Bowness was fined $25,000 American dollars for slamming a stick on the ice, showing emotion, and because, I don't know, Mike, if you saw the end of that St. Louis-Dallas game, first of all, what an exciting game that was. For a 2-1 game, that was a fantastic hockey game. But the officiating there towards the end did not go by the way of the Dallas Stars. Bruce Levine, the radio host of the Dallas Stars, tweeted out today that every penny well spent because it was well deserved because, Miro Heiskanen gets mugged, but he's the one that gets a penalty. Like, yes, the Stars got themselves in penalty trouble, but it wasn't like the refs were giving them a helping hand either. And Rick Bowness slams his stick on the bench, is yelling across the ice in every which way. Doesn't say anything in the post-game presser, though. Was very calm in the post-game presser. Didn't call out the official. He said it was, bad the way the game was, but he wasn't like bashing the officials like we've seen like Tortorella and Brendan Moore do at times. Like, it was pretty mild-mannered. But what he did on the ice, though, earned him the $25,000. Mike, what do you think there? Obviously, we see him yelling and screaming, and God knows what was said. I'm not the best lip reader myself, but is finding a coach for that worth it? I've been up and down with this sort of thing.
I don't know. I mean, like $25,000 probably not that much to Rick Bowness realistically, and I mean that's sometimes that's something where the owner will even take will take that that pay that bill for the coach if it has something to do with like officiating or the league. You know what I mean? So it may not even come out of his pocket, but at the end of the day, I think it is a little silly. Like the guy showed emotion. You know what I mean? Like this is professional sports, and he lost a tight game. He showed emotion. He didn't take it out on anybody. He took it out on the boards, the stanchion, the stick. Ooh, the poor stick. Shit, what a shame. And like I don't know. I guess it sets a bad example for like some kids who may have been there that watched this guy throw a tantrum, and maybe the NHL's like we can't have that bad look on us, because then what if they say, well, I saw Rick Bowness do it next time they lose a game and they start slamming their stick on the boards, so I don't know. I understand on one hand, but on the other hand, like it's just emotion, man. Like it happens.
Yeah, it isn't like, Bobby Clark trying to tomahawk one of the Minnesota North Stars over the head with a stick. I mean, that happened all the time back in the 70s, and he's still revered as a legend. But and like that's the thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, about to say, yeah, no, and that's the hard part too. Is like I mean, that's why. Do you think? Because there may have been something that was said that really hit personally. Like I've heard guys that got suspended from games that when I'm broadcasting, you see a guy get kicked out, and you hear later he said something that was completely inappropriate. And do you think? I'm not going to say that should the NHL disclose what was said, but do you think the NHL? Because the NHL just said, for his actions after the his actions after the game led him to this fine. They didn't say what was said. It was just his actions. Like, do you think the NHL should come out and say something along the lines of, he said something that was inappropriate, inexplicit, or something, just to kind of clarify, because all we see is a coach yelling and screaming about two calls that did not go his way at the end of a hockey game. Like, do you think they should say, hey, he said something that was really, inappropriate?
No.
No,
like I don't think the NHL cares. Like I really don't think they really care if the public knows exactly what it's for, whether it's for just the tantrum of hitting the stick on the glass, or if it's for something that he said. At the end of the day, I don't think the NHL really cares. They're just going to fine him for the way he acted and then kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I've gotten into arguments with refs before, never been kicked out, because I try my best not to swear at a ref, because I realize as soon as I drop that first F word at him, usually the ears go quiet. But yeah, and unfortunately, thankfully, I played at levels of hockey where 25 grand is a lot of money for some of us. So.
Yes.
I'm sorry, us guys in the Fed League never got paid a whole lot of money to get 25 grand was a salary for some people. But we were going to touch on the Leafs blowing a 4-1 lead here. We don't have a whole lot of time to get into it. Mike, I know you talked about it obviously on Locked On Leafs on Monday, and I mean this quickly on it. The story goes on and on. I remember May 13, 2013 as good as anyone.
You mean my 19th birthday?
So you're telling me the first day you were legally allowed to drink outside of Quebec, of course, you were exposed to that game.
Yeah, so imagine how much alcohol consumption I had on my 19th birthday.
See, I was still living at home, so I was limited to chucking my water across the room, and my dad for the first time ever, my dad just looked like, usually my dad be like, hey, that's unacceptable, clean it up. My dad just looked at me and he's like,
Yep.
I get it. I get it.
I get it. Totally get it. Yep.
Uh,
No, it wasn't, like it was 4-1 was like the running joke Saturday night, right? And at the end of the day, though, like I don't equate Saturday night's loss the same way as Boston, clearly.
well,
But
yeah.
not even like last year, like the Leafs gave up a 5-1 lead that they had on Ottawa. I felt way worse about that than I did about, the game on Saturday night. And Colorado's a good team. Like, they're just a good team, and you give them a chance to get back into a game. You take the gas pedal off a little bit. And realistically, it was more so just them taking advantage. Like, they were a little bit slow at the gate, and then once they got going, like the Rantanens, McKinnon had 12 shots in that game. 12 shots. It was insane. But the second that they get going, Makar, they're so tough to beat. And then, I've been talking with like some former NHLers, and they talk about how difficult it is playing in Denver, right? Like
that was the next thing I was going to mention.
The altitude and like their legs turning into jello, and when you're chasing around guys like McKinnon and Rantanen and Landeskog and Makar, and the list goes on and on. Nazem Kadri, you just get fatigued, you get tired, which is something that Sheldon Keefe noted post game, was how the team just looked a little fatigued in the third period, and I can't help but think that that Denver altitude just kind of got to them at that point, because they were just, they came out firing right out of the gates, and Denver sat back, and it was kind of like a boxing match, right? Where it's like Floyd Mayweather, he sits back the first 4 or 5 rounds, lets you exude all your energy, and then by rounds 6, 7, 8, 9, that's when he says, okay, my turn, and then he takes advantage and ends up winning the fight. That was almost kind of like the way that game was, like they took a 3-0 lead, they were rolling, and then all of a sudden, they get 1, and then Toronto gets it back, but then it becomes 4-2, then 4-3, 4-4. They win it in overtime, 5-4. The Maple Leafs lose. But look, Colorado's such a good team. Like I said, they've been averaging 10 or 5 goals a game over the last 10 games. So they were bound to find the back of the net at some point, right? And so they finished the night with 5 goals. It's pretty much what they've been doing to every other team across the NHL. So it was almost expected, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, it's really tough to play in that environment. I went with Western Michigan to Denver to take on the Pioneers, who they've been up and down this year, but for a lot of those kids, it was their first time playing that kind of altitude. The first night was okay. The second night, though, like I think Western got outshot by like a 3-1 margin. Like they just looked like guys were throwing up on the bench and everything. Like it was a tough game to watch from being on the Western side of things, because it is a real thing. I remember I worked out Friday morning before the first game, like actually like a hard workout. Like I've hiked up in the Rocky Mountains, or whatever, like walking up hills, but like actually doing a hard workout, I felt sick. Like it's literally a different element. I couldn't imagine, having to do it for a 60-minute game when you're trying to stop Makar, McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen,
And those
Burakovsky.
just skate, man. Like they just skate and skate and skate, and you gotta try and keep up with that. And they're used to it, right? Like that's home ice advantage. They may have one of the best home ice advantages because of that altitude. Like their home record, I think I saw, like they've won something like 65 or 70% of their home games, like over the last few seasons. Like that, they have a legit home ice advantage based on like that altitude alone, let alone the craziness of the fans in there. And the fans really gave them a lot of juice in that third period as well.
13-2-1 they are this season at Ball Arena. So you can definitely tell certainly an advantage for sure. Last thing we want to touch on here before we wrap things up here on today's edition of Locked On NHL with Mike and Tyler here. The Ottawa Senators. The last time we saw them play was New Year's Day night, when the Toronto Maple Leafs beat them 6-0. Now you may look at yourself like, well, yes, Tyler, the Toronto Maple Leafs are a good hockey team. Ottawa's not so good. 6-0 makes sense. Guys, that was their first game since December the 18th. And as of right now, at the time we're recording this, they are scheduled to play their second game since December the 18th on January 13th. Mike. I mean, we mentioned it last week. The COVID restrictions in Canada pushed a lot of Canadian home games against American teams back unless there was a TV deal. Ottawa doesn't have the same kind of deal, of course, as the Toronto Maple Leafs do, so that obviously kind of hinders things. But this is just this is bad. Like almost an entire month when you only play one game. Yikes.
Yeah, they were, and like it's so unfortunate. I believe they were en route to play Edmonton, and they found out like midway that they're going to get that game canceled.
Right. And that
So
was supposed to be on Monday night. That's right.
right, it's supposed to be tonight. Yeah, or last night. Yeah.
Tonight, the time we're recording this. Yes, folks. Well, we're talking about a hockey game, Mike. I think people have registered by now that we're doing this on a Monday night.
Exactly. But
Who wins Georgia, Alabama? You tell us, folks.
yeah, let's go Bulldogs. But I think I totally forget the point that I was making there. It's just ridiculous. Like at the end of the day, it's ridiculous. The fact that they haven't been able to play any games. Like one game within a what's that, like 26, 27 day span in the middle of your season. It's not like this is, this is like an all-star break or there's an Olympic break or it's this is in the middle of your season. There's like 9 or 10 games that they're supposed to play that they're going to have to make up later down the road. And that's where this is going to get real tricky. Like that's where stuff's going to get interesting. And it's not, a big problem that I would have if I was a player is more so just the fact that like this could like cause injuries. You know what I mean? Like there's some injury issues that could arise if they got to try and cram in, another 50 some odd games in like the next 94 days. Like it's just absolutely insane. The fact that they're going to have to condense this already super condensed schedule because they just keep postponing games, whether it's because of their COVID issues, arena building issues, capacity issues, or opposing team having some issues when it comes to COVID. It's just absolutely ludicrous that this team has played one game since December 18th.
And the crazy part is, as of right now, their schedule is they play Thursday against Calgary, Saturday in Edmonton, both those road games, by the way, at home against Buffalo on the 16th. And that starts, or on the 18th, excuse me, that starts a trend of playing every other night through at least February 1st. They play the 31st and the 1st. They play a back-to-back. And then the alleged All-Star / Olympic break. Now, obviously at this point, the NHL has not worked it out yet of how many games or how the schedule is going to be. Because at this point, we all can pretty much presume that there will be games during that time following the All-Star break. It's just we do not know what the schedule is going to look like, how many games, how they're going to be set up, are they going to be bubbled or whatever. There's all sorts of theories of what may happen. But yeah, that's going to be a chunk of these games. That's going to be they're made up, not just for Ottawa, but all the Canadian teams. Calgary, Vancouver. I think Seattle's going to be in for running for a couple of those because they've obviously had some issues. But there is going to be a compact schedule. Like this second half is going to be ridiculous. And like the Colorado Avalanche, we mentioned them and their home ice advantage. That's going to be great and all, but they're going to be gassed playing towards the second half. All the games they missed early on. Like this is, we obviously we've been focused on the Canadian side of things because of the restrictions of the attendance and what have you. But there's going to be at least, I'd say half the league. I'm going to guess here, Mike. I don't know the exact how many teams have missed more than 10 games, but at least half the league's going to be playing in the middle of February. I could guess, right?
Do you know what team I feel so bad for? Is the Islanders. The Islanders have been the most unluckiest team. They've only played like 28 games.
And well, that was because, remember, they tried to do it, the NHL, because their arena was not going to be ready until November.
Right.
They tried to space it out so they could go home and hang out at home before they hit back the road. And that, unfortunately, with them having COVID breaks as well, that also kind of just really is going to just, and they're not having a great year as it is. Like, it just makes things bad to worse there in Long Island.
But, like, there's some teams that have played legitimately 10 more games than New York has to this point in the season. Like 10 more games. So New York is going to have to fit in an additional 10 games between now and the end of the regular season than, like, every other team. Like, it's just absolute lunacy. I feel so bad for that squad. And considering the year has been a bit of a downer as is, you're just kind of adding a little bit of insult to injury.
How optimistic are you? Last thing here before we wrap things up, because we could probably talk about this saga, this development for easily another hour. What are the chances you think, if you were able to put money down, would you guess that the league is going to finish the regular season by April 30th?
Is that the expected date as of now? What's the expected final date? Was it like April 18th or something?
April 18th. Well, right now, the Sens Flyers, I just had the Senators schedule up. Their last game is set for April 29th. I think April 18th was the original set date, maybe. Because I remember that I think a few of these were rescheduled games that
Maybe
were
that's
added on.
that might be the final Leafs home game. Maybe that's what I'm right. That date sticks out to me for some reason. That could be the Leafs' final home game. Because I know they had a couple of games on the road and later in the season. But honestly, no. If there as of now, if the schedule was to go through until, and we could look this up. I'm going to look this up really quickly just to make sure. But if this expected to go till the end of April, there's no doubt in my mind that this season is being be extended at least 2 weeks. And I think I saw Darren Dreger talk about that at some point last week, saying how there's been some discussions about extending the season an additional 2 weeks to make sure that you just give these teams who have missed so many games just a little bit more time to get these games in so that it doesn't risk injury. Like, this is an NHLPA issue as well. It's not just getting the games in, it's getting the games in safely. And so I think just for purely based on safety, they're going to have to extend the season. So as of now, you see what I did there? That was professional right there. I was able to talk my way until I finally pulled up the schedule. So now I can sit here.
I beat you to that one, Mike. I made sure I went on. I pulled it up. The last day that I have on the NHL calendar here, all 32 teams play on April the 29th.
Yeah.
And makes me wonder if that was already scheduled or whatnot. Because with the later start, we knew the season was going to go back a little bit later. The Leafs do play at home against the Bruins on that night. So I think there was talk that the last game was going to be the 18th, so which would have been about 2 weeks after the original, what we usually see in April, which of course with the league starting back 2 weeks later than usual, that was kind of be expected. But at this point right now,
I would be shocked if we're not playing regular season games in May. Yeah.
Because I want to say, I'm like, well, if we start, May 1st or whatever, we go bang right into the playoffs. Are we able to get it done by Canada Day or even the 4th of July? But I'm sitting here thinking, what's it like seeing? Are we going to see the Cup back like July 17th again? Are we going to have the draft and free agent frenzy happen late in July, early August again? It's almost like we're having this problem once again that we had last season.
I think that's almost the expectation. I don't know if it's going to go as late into the offseason as it did last year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did carry into a little bit later into July, like the first week of July, as opposed to, the third week of July. So it was like July 20-something-ish before we had the draft and free agency. Like, it was pretty late into the month. It was definitely in the back half of the month where I could see it maybe moving up a couple more weeks than it was last season, but I'd be shocked if we have, our traditional draft in the final week of June, free agency by July 1, and everybody hits their vacays and cottages by July 2. I don't think that's going to be the case this year.
You're literally going to, if the league can somehow figure out February to get it to the point where they can get it done by April 29th, sure. But I don't see any, just by the way the schedule is getting compact.
But even April 29th, like typically the season wraps up like by mid-April. So it's already extended 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So realistically, you got to think that it's got to go 2 weeks than normal. So you're already into early to mid-July just based on the calendar as is now without the threat of it being extended again. So, yeah.
Do you think the playoffs, I know we're a little bit early on this, but we're just going to throw it in here anyways. Do you think the playoffs are just going to stick to every other day? Like, because there's some series that last year, and of course 2 years, and even in 2020, there were 2 days off in between games. I don't think the league wants to do that again this year because I feel like they want to try to get it done. Because remember last year, they were against the clock on the Olympics. They had to get it done like a week before the Olympics started in August. Like, that was the big thing, is that they had to be out. Obviously the NBC deal was a big part of that. And so they were against the clock. But I think at this point, if you want to have as normal as an offseason as you can, you have to force every team to play every other day. No bones about it.
Yeah. I wouldn't see why you wouldn't do that. Like,
yeah,
I think the ones where they do that is more if it's like coast to coast,
in the finals and stuff.
Well, in the finals, in like, I don't know, let's say you're in the West, right? And technically you've got, isn't there's a couple of teams that are in the
Well, like
West.
Vegas, Montreal last year. Yeah, I know there was a 2-day break there.
Well, that was different though, because that was just like the top 4 teams, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I hope that, they can easily just go 1-1. Yeah, why not? Like, just day on, day off, day on, day off, day on, day off. There you go.
That's what you do during the year. And by the way, since we've been talking, the Bruins have scored 2 more goals against Zach Fucale.
Oh,
Jinxed it already, Mike. And I will say this: I've been noticing the goals, and I maybe one with a long range wrister, but the other 3, Foucali's getting hung out to dry. The Caps are playing horrible right now. So if you guys want to know my reaction on how Zach Fucale got hung out to dry by the Capitals, be sure to tune in to also today's Locked On Caps, because I'm pretty sure I'll be yelling during this show, because it's one of those. And yeah, you have a young goaltender, not young goaltender, but a rookie goaltender. You got to help him out as best you can. But well, that's a discussion for a different day. We got to get out of here, Mike, or else Sean's going to call us and hand us pink slips or something here coming up. Geez, it's hard to keep these under 30 minutes, eh?
It's virtually impossible. I think if we can keep them to under 45 going forward, I think that's considered a win. We're rolling on 50 minutes here for this one? Yeah, we got
50 minutes, and Foucali's getting pulled. Not his fault at all. I'm start chucking phones here in the studio here, talking about that.
We went from, is this guy the next Jack Campbell, to now he can't even make it halfway through the game, literally in like 20 minutes. How crazy
the Caps stopped playing about 5 minutes in. After they got the 2-0 lead, they just, yeah. Anyways, that's discussion for a different time. You'll obviously hear that on Locked On Capitals on today's show, as well as Locked On Leafs, when Mike Distefano is going to talk about.
Tomorrow we'll be teeing up the game between the Maple Leafs and the Vegas Golden Knights, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Austin Matthews says that's one of his favorite arenas to play in.
It's a pretty good arena, I hear. I haven't been. I'd like to, but I hear it's pretty good.
I was just going to think the fact that he's in Las Vegas makes it a little bit nicer. I'm pretty sure, you just walk down the road and, Vegas, that's a thing.
There's COVID rules now, though. Like, are they even allowed to go out and party? I don't even think so. They've got some protocols they got to follow.
That's true. Are they doing room? I don't know if they do room checks in the NHL. That'd be something. Holy cow. Anyways, make sure you follow us at Locked On NHL Pods. Be sure to follow Mike, of course, at Mickey_Canuck. And follow me, the Insider of the Insiders, Tyler Kuehl, at TJKU29, and Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'll be doing some fun stuff. I'll be out in Colorado College this weekend with Western, so some fun Colorado Springs World Arena, fun little USUS hockey talk I'll be doing. Back tomorrow here on Locked On NHL. Check us out. All the 32 teams covered, your team every day here on Locked On NHL. Mike, thanks again, buddy. We'll see you all on Tuesday next week.